That is the episode of the Autumn Windbags. RJ Clifford, Juan Soto. Let's have some fun today. The Raiders are single and ready to mingle. I mean, they don't have a coach. They don't have an OC. They don't have a DC. They don't have an O-line coach. They are swiping right. They are power swiping. Give us a stat.
Unattached and looking for snatch.
Oh, they are ripe. They are looking for the pickings. So you might have heard the news. Antonio Pierce, former interim head coach, now and then current head coach this season, fired on Tuesday. We did an immediate reaction video that afternoon for about a half hour. If you want to go check out the immediate emotional reaction, here we are recording this Wednesday night, about 36 hours later. So in that time, we've had a chance to digest a little bit. We'll get into the head coaching search, who the Raiders have interviewed, who we think they should interview. But first off, just like 36 hours later, Soto, like we got our emotional reaction, just like the first thing we thought of, what we went through. Now that you've had a chance to digest the whole situation. Anything change in your mind? Any epiphanies up into that?
No, not really. Yeah, you feel bad for the person because he is a lifelong Raider fan, and he was very passionate about the franchise and about doing a good job, and he wanted to do a good job. Unfortunately, this business is about production, and if you're going to bank on future production, there has to be some sort of like progression involved in that. And
what do we always say? It's not where you are, where you're going, right? I don't want to buy a stock that's maxed out. I want to buy a stock that's on its way up. And
and it's like, I heard some people out there, making the points like, oh man, he beat the Chiefs at the Chiefs last year with Aiden O'Connell at quarterback. If not for a bad snap, they would have, kind of glanced over the decisions that he made, like spiking the ball when you didn't have to in those situations. And I think those types of decisions in crunch time, like to end the half and to end the game, really made a big difference in, quite a few wins and losses, because they were in a lot of close games. I mean, they got blown out a few times, but they were in a lot of close games as well. And, I said it, in the last post-game show, I said it yesterday in the reaction show, the Raiders were outscored in the last 2 minutes of the first half and in the game, like 70-40. And I looked and just randomly browsing, they had 21 points. So 3 touchdowns that were scored with garbage time, under 2 minutes, less or more than 2 scores behind. And those are just meaningless points that you probably put going against backups at that time. So
those are Brock Bowers stat padding.
Oh yeah, for sure. But it's like you put your team in those bad situations by poor play, calling and clock management on your last possession before, and allowing teams to score quick touchdowns or quick field goals to end the half, and just tipping the scales of the game. And I feel bad, like I really do. But ultimately, the bottom line is you're looking at a division with 3 Super Bowl caliber coaches and 1 Super Bowl
two and a half caliber quarterbacks.
Well,
2 in pen.
You have one quarterback who's probably one of the best in the game, and you have another one who's kind of like trying to get there, and another one who shows some promise to get there. And that's not all his fault. It's not all AP's fault, but what did he do? And I think a lot of the people who are saying this is an unfair firing and it was too early, they're looking at all the reasons why not to, and they didn't look at the reasons why they should have. And I get it, man. He's a Raider. He wants to be there. He didn't want to coach anywhere else. He wants to be the Raiders head coach. That was his dream job. But he still had to perform his job. And although all the losses weren't his fault, a lot of them were. and his bad decisions and his just the lack of progression and the lack of progress that he made as a head coach, it had to be done because the gap between him and the rest of the coaches in that division is far too wide for him not to be progressing and not to be picking these things up.
When you're a CEO head coach, you have to be able to put together a great staff. Failed. You got to be incredible at game management. Failed. You got to be able to run a great practice. Players were complaining that there was a waste of time. There was no accountability.
Yeah, a lot of people forget that.
Like there was a lot of look, he's not bringing in a scheme. He's not bringing experience. He's not like bringing with him, his dad, who's an amazing defensive coordinator, or this, this legion of guys that are just like masterminds that just follow him around. Like some coaches have, like he's straight up like he could only do like 6 things. And like one of them he was good at. He motivated players. Everything else, like what did he do well? So, this is a very different feeling than when Josh McDaniels got fired. I went back and looked. Like we had over 10,000 views on that Josh McDaniels firing video. Like there were like hundreds of people watching us live at like 11:30 at night on Halloween because Raider Nation couldn't wait to dance on his grave because he sucked. And he like it doesn't even like he's like, well, he just tried hard and it just didn't work out. It's like, no, he brought like Aiden O'Connell into his petty beefs. He like cut players because they didn't kiss the ring, just a bunch of dumb shit. And then he sucked. This is such a very different feeling. This is like, hey man, sorry to see you leave. We know you gave it your best. No hard feelings. Go back to the college ranks, be a linebacker coach. And, 10 years from now, we'll be rooting for you to get back in the league and be a head coach someday. But you are not ready to lead any one of the 32 NFL teams and certainly not the Raiders. So very different vibe. Like we had very few viewers when AP got fired because it's like kind of depressing a little bit. Like, you have to do it, but it's not fun. Like it's fun to break up with a chick that sucked. That's fun. You're like, fuck this bitch. I'm out of here. You know what I mean? Let's go get the boys together. Let's get hammered. Let's get taqueria at 2 a.m. We're celebrating. This one's just like, I'm going to go listen to Zach Bryan and sit in the car by myself in the dark and be sad. Didn't work out.
It's like Josh McDaniels was like one of the pack of wild dogs that kept attacking your dogs and you shot them. Mm-hmm. You're like, hell yeah. And unfortunately, Antonio Pierce was your dog that was attacked by the wild dogs that got rabies and you had to put them down.
Yeah.
It was a shame, but it had to be done, it sucks. But for the good of the rest of the dogs, for the good of the rest of the organization, it had to be done, unfortunately. And a lot of people don't feel that way. A lot of people feel it's unfair. A lot of people feel that he should have gotten a more of a chance. And the problem is with the way things went down, with a lot of the things that may have gone against the team, but not against AP specifically in his decision making, was, and we talked about this before, about not using all the cap space, saving some cap space for this year, because you can carry over a certain amount of cap space from one year to the next. Controlling the contracts and all the decisions that need to be made from besides head coach, from the coordinators to who the quarterback's going to be, who the quarterback coach is going to be, who's the offensive line coach who's going to help the running game, who's the running back going to be, who you're going to take with your first pick, your second pick, your third pick, your 2 third-round picks. Who's going to do all these things, and there's a lot of decisions to be made here. And if we make solid decisions on all of these decisions, it doesn't have to be home runs. Like I said, they don't have to all be home runs, just good, solid decisions and no whiffs and no face palm picks and no face palm decisions. This can be a quick turnaround for this team. Windows open quickly in the NFL, and this could be one of them.
And I feel bad, like kind of for like Raider Nation and for what happened, but don't feel too bad for Antonio Pierce. Like there's only 32 head coaching jobs it's the most prestigious coaching job in America, an NFL head coach. Maybe you can say like Lakers head coach or like Yankees manager, but pretty much like the 32 NFL head coaches are like 32 of the top 40 most prestigious coaching jobs in America, right? He got one of them, and it was a gift. Perfect timing. Linebacker coach when the head coach got canned. The team played just good enough in the 9 games as an interim where he got the opportunity. Like, guys grind for 40 years in the league who don't get a chance to be a head coach. And he got the opportunity. And with it, invaluable experience. He got to hire people. He got to hire his son to work with him. Every single person he hired, that's an IOU. That's how it works in this league. I scratch your back, you scratch my back. Somebody on our staff is going to be a GM or coach somewhere someday. They're going to owe one to AP. So, like, all these people like, oh, he was set up to fail. Like, this was so unfair. He got stabbed in the back. He is way better today than he was 19 months ago when he was a miscellaneous linebacker coach that no one was talking about. So it didn't work out. But trust me, like, in the divorce, AP got enough. He walked out with more than he walked in with.
And what we need to realize here is the direction of AP's career is going to be up to him from here on out. Like you said, he got exposure, and that type of exposure you can't buy. You can't buy being the head of a franchise and being looked at. Now he's being looked at as somebody who can possibly do that in the future. Before, he wasn't really looked at like that. And this is a case of someone who was given an opportunity. Sometimes it works out. Like Mike Tomlin, he was a defensive coordinator for 1 year with the Vikings. And they were going to hire, Russ Grimm. That was like the freaking word around the campfire in Pittsburgh. Oh, Russ Grimm, let's hire this guy. He was like a Dan Campbell before Dan Campbell. Let's hire Russ Grimm's going to be the guy. Well, it's our own rule, the Rooney rule. Let's go ahead and interview Mike Tomlin. And he blew everyone away. It happens. But you have to go on the field and perform. And you have to show that you're good at the job of being a head coach. Being a head coach is more than just X's and O's. It's more than just dealing with the team and the players. It's more than getting them hyped and ready to play. It's also how you run the game and the decisions you make when the clock is ticking during the game. And unfortunately, those are the most glaring because you see them happen and unfold right before your eyes.
Yeah, like we never would have known without that little tiny leak that the players were upset with how he was running practices. You know what I mean? But like, if you fuck up some timeouts, everyone, like when it's on network television, the most watched shows in America are NFL games. Like, everyone sees your warts. You know what I mean? Like, the difference between being like a defensive tackle and a corner. Like, if you fuck up as a defensive tackle, you don't always catch it. If you let someone beat you as a corner, everyone knows that you got beat. And he fucked up when at the spots where the spotlights were the brightest on him.
Yeah.
It was kind of weird how it happened, right? Like, we kind of predicted it. It was like, look, Mark Davis works at a glacier's pace. He needs to like call everybody before he does anything. And so the Sunday presser with AP seemed like kind of down, like the writing was on the wall. And then the Monday presser, he was all smiles. He had a starter jacket on. He's just like, all right, yeah, guys, like, we're going to do this. We're going to do this next year. This, like, he sounded like a guy that was told you're safe. But really, it was like, you know how when like you want to break up with a chick and she kind of knows, she'll start being like, we should get a dog together. We should go on this vacation in 3 months. Like, start like building a foundation that like we have a future, like insinuate that there's a future.
With another chick at the same time.
We should do all these things. Like, that was Antonio Pierce on the Monday presser. He's just like, yeah. I have all these plans for us when I'm, head coach next year. And it was him just kind of like passively aggressively trying to like put it in the universe.
Yeah. And I mean, I understand the timetable because Tom Brady being one of the guys that was consulted about what to do, he was working on Sunday. And he wasn't able to be there. And, he had to come in, and I'm sure that he was present during the meetings that were made on Monday and, had to stew over it. And then the next day it was executed. So, I mean, I don't think that's that big of a deal, but I mean, anyone who saw this decision with any type of objectivity, who took a step back and looked, they knew that he had to go.
Mm.
I think that a lot of the people that I hear on different clips and podcasts and stuff like that, they're mostly the national people, and they all have the same narrative. Oh, well, he wasn't given a quarterback, and it's all the same excuses that you and I just blew out of the water.
Mm.
Aside from wins and losses, because I don't know that was. I think maybe losing 10 in a row. I mean, we're not worried about wins and losses is one thing. Losing 10 straight, okay, that puts a little bit of a freaking emphasis on that, right?
Yeah.
But initially, I don't think that was the big deal. I think it was just watching him progress, because that's what Mark Davis said. He said that himself. He said, you have to give him time to grow into the role and this and that, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, that's all well and good, but you have to win something along the way. And they were losing a lot of these games, really close games that had some better decisions been made during that contest, it would have been the other way. And just the fact that he wasn't getting better, these are things that aren't being talked about by the Colin Cowherds, by the Florios, by the Achos, and that sex group over there at Fox. It's not being talked about by these people. All it's being talked about is he wasn't given a fair shot. He didn't have a quarterback. Look what happened. They got rid of Jacobs, and look at this. Look at all these injuries, and they don't want to talk about him. They don't want to talk about his job and what he did wrong. It's all what happened around him, and that's just victim mentality. It's ridiculous, and I think the real fans of the Raiders who want the Raiders to do well realize that. The Raiders who were just surface Raider fans who are like, yeah, I just want to, yeah, AP, he's the guy. Yeah, he's like me. He's like a fan like me. It's like, dude, no, I don't care. I didn't care who the quarterback was. I don't care who the coach is. I don't care. I want to put a winning product on the field. And I don't know, and I don't think anyone else here knows that AP was making the progress to be able to do that consistently.
The one argument I want to have a retort on, because there's a lot of we've been over it a million times, right? The things that were going against him, he had no control over. It's like, yeah, that's true. All those things happened. He was dealt a shitty hand, but then he played it like shit. Like we're not going to judge you on what's out of your control. We're going to judge you on what's in your control. What was in your control, you failed. AP, it's as simple as that. But our good friend Adam Hill from the Las Vegas Review Journal, he did. I just saw a clip from that Las Vegas AM ESPN radio affiliate that he hosts sometimes with Steve Cofield. And the clip was him saying, like, look, I can't believe, I don't understand people that co-signed and wanted Antonio Pierce to be head coach and then now want him fired. It's like, what did you think you were going to get? You think it was going to be a completely different guy after a year? Did you think he was going to come in and just magically fix everything or be a different guy, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, but I didn't expect him to regress. The number one defense for the 9 games in his interim time, killing it in the turnover margin, best penalties in the league, like the least number of penalties and yards in the league. Like those were the things I wanted to hire him for. Those were the things we're like, okay, you got the Raiders to be the least penalized team in football, the historically astronomically overpenalized franchise of the last 40 years. Like no one's even close. And you got them to be the least and turnovers and number one defense, worst defense of the last 20 years. Okay. That's 3 miracles you performed in 9 weeks. Let's give this guy a shot. And then none of those things panned out. So it's not like we thought he was going to magically get better as a game manager or know all the things the head coach had to know. It's that we thought those amazing miracles he performed last season, that would buoy him as he learns. Like, okay, well, he's going to make some mistakes. Like, how many times we talk about it in the preseason? Buckle up. He's going to have some major fuck ups in game management. It's going to happen, but the guys are going to play hard. They're not going to be penalized. They're going to be disciplined. The defense is going to play lights out, blah, blah, blah. And none of the things he did well last season, he was able to do this season. That's why he was fired. Not because he didn't turn into something that he never was. It's because he didn't bring the things that got him hired in the first place from his interim time.
You know, if there wasn't such a huge swing in some of these things, you know, if like some of the ones that popped into my mind was the turnover margin, right? We were scoring touchdowns defensively. We were getting a lot more turnovers, and we weren't turning the ball over ourselves. If it wasn't just a complete flip-flop, maybe it could be okay. All right, this is something that's,
Bad luck
it's an
happens.
ebb
What
and
can you
flow. It's an ebb and flow
do?
naturally
Yeah,
of football,
it's going to regress to
right?
the mean,
Exactly. But the fact that it flipped like that, and can we really give him the credit then if it flip-flopped the exact opposite way the next season?
Not to cut you off, just to drive home how drastic that turnover margin is when it comes to wins and losses. All right, just to like this we can spend an entire episode on how important that is and what happened with the Raiders and AP. Right, of all the stats in the world, passing yards, time of possession, penalty yards, whatever, there's only one stat that's omnipotent, and that's turnover margin. That's the only stat that decides who goes to the playoffs, who doesn't, who wins, who doesn't. Just this season, I did the math today. Just this season, 15 teams had a positive turnover differential. 15 in the NFL. 13 are in the playoffs. Bears at +8. Didn't get it. And Bengals at +3. They're not. There's 17 teams with a negative turnover differential. 1 is in the playoffs. Buccaneers at -5. Like, I mean, I don't know how much more like cut and dry you can make it. Like, there's no stat that's anywhere close to turnover margin. And so when AP crushed it during the interim time, it's like we could go to the playoffs just on that. Like, we could get there just by like dominating. We can be below average on everything, but if we crush it in the turnover margin, we could win a lot of games and go deep. And so when that switched to the opposite, like that's not being talked about enough. That is not being talked about enough. How the turnover margin went from amazing to somehow the Browns got worse than us this season in turnover margin, but we were the worst all season long, and now we ended up second worst.
It's a big sign of consistency in your team, not necessarily having the best numbers, but having somewhat of a consistent number. It means that your team is prepared. It means that your team is receiving coaching and the details, because the details is what causes turnovers. You forget to hold the ball tight. You forget to secure the ball. You throw a lazy pass. You don't block well enough, and your quarterback gets hit hard. The details is what causes turnovers. And normally teams that are more detail oriented have better turnover margin. And that shows in the wins and losses, and it shows in the playoff numbers. It's just I think you talked about it last season or last year when AP was officially given the job. You took a step back and you said, I remember this. It was he coached on emotion, but that runs out, right? Mm-hmm. And then the actual coaching has to take over. And it's so true, because yes, you can get a team motivated and hungry to play, and the team never quit on them, and I give them that. But after that, what's there? What's the real? That's the icing, right? But where's the cake at? Mm-hmm. And that, like the real nuts and bolts of the foundation of the coaching just wasn't there. The team talked about it like, when have you heard of a team saying you're too easy on us? You're not holding us accountable enough. Mm-hmm. Your practices are too relaxed. Like, when have you heard that before? And how bad does it have to be for someone to actually say that, a team to actually say that? And it's just all these things put together. Any one of these things, okay, maybe not a big deal, but you put all of these things together, and it makes a lot more sense when you look at it from that perspective. And of course, a lot of the talking heads from the mainstream media, sports talking heads, they don't care about this nuance. All they wanted to put the words and the content, and they just spit out the same just garbage over. They all spit out the same stuff, the same verbiage. But we know different. right? You listeners and RJ and I and some of the other content creator guys, we know different because we're immersed in all this. And it's kind of a moot point now because we can't do anything about it. It's done and over with. And looking forward is all we can focus on.
So what did we learn from all this? One of the big things I learned from not just Antonio Pierce, but also Josh McDaniels was Mark Twain put it best. History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme, right? With Josh McDaniels, we're like, the guy completely flopped as a head coach in Denver. He completely flopped as an offensive coordinator with the Rams. He never succeeded anywhere unless he was under Bill Belichick's umbrella. That was the only time he ever did anything good. It sucked everywhere else. Like, well, he can learn, he can adapt, blah, blah, blah. And I remember I said it, but I didn't drive it home. I just thought it. When we hired Antonio Pierce, I brought up one stat one time, and I should have brought it up 50 times. Interim coaches' success as full-time coaches is atrocious. It never works. Since 2000, there's been 50 interim head coaches, and 11 of them got the full-time job. You know how many of them had a winning record? One. Jason Garrett. He's the only one. It just doesn't work for whatever reason. I don't have the answer, right? And I can't tell you the how or the why, but I can tell you what. And I remember I read that stat, and I said it on the show, but then I buried it. I was just like, well, this is different. And we moved on, right? It's like, are we? Are we different? Like, are we going to drastically change history and math? Like, no.
Look,
like, take that shit seriously about what happened in the past.
Our franchise doesn't change the other 31 franchises. And those are the teams that we're playing. So, yeah, we can be ready to play and we can be pumped up and we can be hyped up for this interim coach to be given the head coaching job. But we still have to play the other 31 teams. Mm-hmm. And that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where you really see what you have, not just, being pumped up about getting the guy that you want to get hired.
So let's leave on a positive note, because this isn't a celebration. We're not dancing on the grave of Antonio Pierce like we were.
I'm bummed, man. I wanted it to work.
We're saying, we're holding the handkerchief out of the train as we're leaving the train station, waving it at him. It's like, sorry, bro, like it just didn't work out. What's the best memory you have of the Antonio Pierce era? We'll end it on a happy note, because there's a lot. Beating Kansas City on Christmas Day,
the Christmas game.
That was awesome. Putting 63 on the Chargers was awesome. His Impala, fucking sweet. His Raiders chant was great.
What was really cool, honestly, was this season when they beat Baltimore, and then banging on the lockers and the walls, seemingly to the other locker room, to let them know that, yeah, we took one from you.
There's a little bit I loved having the swagger last season, like a couple, it still only went 5-4, but starting to feel good a little bit. Like, these are 25-year-old, 26-year-old, testosterone-filled, young, dumb, and full of cum fucking machines, man. Like, you put a little pep in their step, right? A little swagger, you get good results, man. Like, you can do that. That was fun to have. Dude, going to that 63-21 Charger game on Thursday Night Football was one of the greatest events I've ever attended in my life. Like, especially after losing 3-0 to Minnesota the week before. I'll never forget. Like, I was about 3 minutes late getting to the game, and we had already scored. And I was like, oh, wow, we win. Like, wow, we scored a touchdown. That's a miracle. Yeah, the game's over. Yeah. 8 touchdowns later, we're still. That was such an amazing game for so many reasons. Like, my boy hooked me up with great seats. My buddy that hooked me up is no longer with us. So, I'll always have that with him. So for me, R.I.P. Derek. There's a lot of sentimental reasons for me, but that was one of and Josh McDaniels was the head coach for that, man. He was an integral part of one of the best sporting events.
Antonio Pierce.
Period. Yeah, he was a part of that, man. So plenty of good memories for sure. There were some good times.
Definitely good times.
All right. So with everything, it's instead of what would Jesus do, is like, what's Brady gonna do? Kind of dictates everything, right? Like, is he gonna be 100% involved in this? Is it gonna have his fingerprints all over it, like a Brian Flores or a Vrabel? The Raiders already reached out to Bill Belichick. That was reported. So let's talk about that for a second. Raiders reached out to was it North Carolina, right? He's at University of North Carolina. Bill Belichick's head coach there. The Raiders reached out to Bill Belichick, and we don't know how extensive. Like, was it just Brady with the text, like, you up? Or was it like, all right, dude, I'm flying to Raleigh or wherever the fuck you are. I want to sit down and hammer this out and convince you to come. We don't know which one it was. But the Raiders reached out for Bill Belichick, which I thought was weird considering they didn't last season, but they waited for him to be a college coach to at least put the feelers out this season. I thought that was weird.
Well, I mean, it's not that weird considering that Brady really wasn't involved last season, and what he is now. I just think we dodged a bullet. I think that especially offensively, where we need the most help, I think Bill Belichick is an atrocious evaluator of talent.
External talent. I think he's good at his own guys. He's
no. He's only drafted one skill position Pro Bowler ever.
No. We're saying the same thing. When the guys are in his building, he's the master of knowing when to cut them loose and get something for them. It's getting the right guys in the building.
Defensively, I think more than anything.
Getting them in the building. The only reason people think he's a good drafter is he's super good at getting compensatory picks. He's like, he just
not even then, dude. Not even then.
He just drafts.
He only drafted one skill position offensive Pro Bowler, and that was Gronk.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
He drafted a lot of other linemen and defensive players, though.
Linemen, yeah, and defensive guys, sure, but that's the skill position players. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of people figured out that the way that he did things, the Patriot way, right? It worked when you had Tom Brady as the glue keeping it all together. Because once Tom Brady was gone, that this freaking whole thing fell apart.
Mm.
And people may like scratch their heads as to why we're so kind of focused on the fact that Tom Brady's going to help make some of these decisions. Is because he was that glue for so long. And he did have to marry the system with the production because he was the conduit to that.
Mm.
And you don't play for 20 years under a guy and make things work as well as he did for so long. I think one of the most impressive things was the gap in time between the kind of dynasties that they had, right? The multiple Super Bowls and then a pocket of years with nothing, and then multiple again. Totally different teams, totally different styles, but they were still able to get it done. It's the consistencies, it's the way things are supposed to look. And think of like these high-end executives that go from one business to another business. They leave an automotive industry and they go to like a telecommunications company. Well, that's not their expertise, right? But they know about leadership. They know about how business is supposed to work. They know about putting a team together, and they're successful. We know these people who have jumped around from different businesses and stuff like that, who just go somewhere, work a couple of years in a high C-level job, and then they're gone with a hefty, bonus package, right? It happens all the time. It's not about doing the specific job, the nuts and bolts of what the industry is, but knowing how to put all that stuff together. And you don't play 20 years in a successful organization without knowing that.
Look, I don't know. You don't know. I don't even think Tom Brady knows if he's going to be good at whatever this role is going to turns into, right? Like, we don't know if he's going to be good. We don't know. We don't know. But I will say the Raiders desperately need a Brady type substance, a guy with a lot of cachet, a guy with nothing to lose, a guy that can't get fired, a guy that doesn't have to kiss ass to Mark Davis, a guy from outside the building, a guy with a lot of experience to push the franchise in a cohesive direction. The Raiders need that. And we haven't had that since Al Davis. There hasn't been anybody like that since Al Davis that knows football, knows business, is a leader, and is the czar, and can doesn't have to politic to get what he wants. He can just make a decision and go. There hasn't been anyone like that in the organization since the godfather of the organization. Okay. So again, I don't know if Tom Brady is that guy, but we need that guy. And he's the first guy to try it. It's like men marry women. They marry one thing. Like a man will marry a woman. Women marry two things. Women marry a man and they marry marriage. Like women want to be married and the guy kind of comes along with it. Whereas the man is just like, I don't have to be married, but I love this woman and I want to marry her. Right. That's kind of like what Tom Brady is. He doesn't need a job. He doesn't need a politic to make sure his resume looks good. And I'm not going to go to the Raiders because it'll make me kind of not look good. I'll wait till I can be a team president of another organization that wins. He doesn't give a shit about any of that. He's the man marrying the woman. He doesn't care about that. All he cares about is trying to make it good. Whether he's going to be a good husband or not, we don't know. But we know he doesn't have all the politicking and bullshit that comes with roles like this. And that is desperately needed.
I mean, I'll take you back on that, the whole marriage talk, by saying this: men marry women for who they are now, and women marry men for who they will be in the future,
who they want them to be.
And ask yourself this: all those people who were talking down on this decision and the whole Tom Brady talk, who knows more about personnel decisions, Tom Brady or Mark Davis? Who has more experience playing in the NFL? Who has more experience dealing with coaches and dealing with players? Who has more experience with winning and winning franchises? That's the guy who was making the decisions before, right? And his dad told us, he told us himself, I don't know what I'm doing. We want to have somebody in that position who can grow into that position. And he's a little bit of both. Right now, he knows, because he hasn't been retired that long. He knows current NFL. He knows players. He knows coaches. He knows what wins now. As time goes on, he's going to get experience in the other end, not just interacting with them. I'm sure he got some pointers and he learned from different people, right? But also doing it himself. So I understand that he hasn't done the job before, but you have to start somewhere. And a lot of these executives who grow into these positions, executive VPs of football operations or whatever you want to call it, they started somewhere. And starting somewhere, being a 20-year veteran, greatest of all time, multiple Super Bowl winner in multiple franchises, is a pretty good starting point.
So he will have a very, very big role in deciding who the head coach is. It may be as straight up as what he says goes, or it could be as little as he's just kind of part of the committee. I'm kind of inclined to believe that Tom Brady will make the decision, but he'll definitely lean on the people around him that are there, and he'll take their advice and blah, 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 blah. So currently, the Raiders have interviewed 4 candidates, or about to. Both coordinators for the Lions, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. Chiefs DC, Steve Spagnuolo. And the Ravens offensive coordinator, Todd Monken. And that's just in the last 36 hours. So there's going to be more. Many more. Hopefully a lot more. You're an idiot if you're not interviewing those 4. Are we going to get look, Ben Johnson's the wet dream, I think, at least in my opinion. Getting him would be a godsend. Of the 6 teams that are available, I don't know if he'll choose us. I think, it's Do you want to be an offensive coordinator or a head coach for a team that doesn't have a quarterback and, in a rebuilding year? Who knows? Maybe he's one of those dudes that likes the challenge. You know what I mean? Maybe he's one of those guys. Like, I remember when I was playing NCAA football 2004, I was always Eastern Carolina because they were like ranked 112 out of 112 teams because I wanted to take the worst team in the nation and win the national championship with them, right? Maybe Ben Johnson wants something like that too. Like, I don't know. Ears open. But
What a guy.
Those are the four so far, Soto. Belichick notwithstanding.
Yeah, I mean, these are all really strong candidates. And I think what we need to focus on is no one's being given an opportunity like an Antonio Pierce style.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one being interviewed for this job that's not being interviewed by everyone else who needs a head coach.
Yeah.
So we're not fishing out of a different pond right now. We're all fishing in the same pond. It's not like, we're just following everyone else. Well, you know what? Sometimes you follow everyone else because they seem to know what they're doing. You don't always have to buck the trends. You don't always have to go against the stream. And right now, we're going after and kicking the tires on the best candidates available. And that's not just us saying it. That's the entire NFL saying it.
So there's currently 6 teams looking for a head coach, right? Raiders, Jets, Jags, Bears, Saints, Pats. Do you think any other head coaches will be fired this offseason?
Ooh, I doubt it.
It's getting a little, every minute that passes by makes it less likely. Dabble survived. He'll probably stay. Browns head coach?
No, I think he's going to be all right.
He'll be all right. He'll survive.
I mean, it's just. I don't know. I don't think so. I think
that's probably the 6, right?
Yeah,
which is great news. Which is great news for us because it does feel like there's more quality head coaching candidates than positions available. It feels that way, right? So the 4 we just mentioned, I'd be all jacked about. Mike Vrabel is still being talked about. Mike, it looks like it's stronger and stronger chance he's going to the Pats. I mean, Liam Coen.
Liam Cohen is a good one, man.
I think I'd be stoked on that.
I love Liam Cohen. He's a sneaky pick. He's young. He's like one of those young guys, those young McVay guys.
Mm-hmm.
Coaches with McVay for a few years, goes out there and just – I mean, look, with all the limitations, the limitations that the offensive personnel at Tampa had, and then all the injuries and all the turnover, they were 4th in the league in scoring. He's a pretty damn good coach, and he's 39 years old.
Mike Evans missed like 5 games, turned Baker Mayfield into what he is.
Dude, Mike Evans missed 5 games. Godwin missed most of the games. Injuries up and down the offensive line. Uncertainty at running back.
And the run game was great. The run game was awesome.
Bucky went in there and made it happen. A guy they got in like the 5th round. I was like pounding the table for him, like, we should get him. Didn't get him. But dude, he's a great offensive mind. Is that going to translate into head coach? I don't know. But he's been a coordinator at multiple places. And I just think he's a smart offensive mind. And I think that's what we need to look for in the same veil as like the John Grudens and like the Josh McDaniels, like the head coach that's also a coordinator. Mm-hmm. And having a good offensive coordinator for a long period of time is a lot better for longevity of success than a kind of CEO style head coach.
And it's not a done deal. I'm still holding out hope, but it's looking like Patrick Graham's gonna leave. I'm guessing probably the Bengals defensive coordinator, and it sucks to say it, but I guess I can't blame him. Like, you get to go be defensive coordinator for this great offense. And like, Joe Burrow is the quarterback that can bail me out of it, blah, blah, blah. And like, I got the sack leader on my defense. Like, all right, whatever, I get it. The silver lining of that is that if there's a really great defensive minded, defensive coordinator, head coach, you're not kind of counter programming yourself, right? Because like Patrick Graham, like I wanted to keep him as defensive coordinator. If you get a defensive head coach with a different scheme, it's like Patrick Graham's probably going to go when we lose our best coach. Like, it wouldn't make sense. Now that Patrick Graham's gone, again, wish we'd keep him, but the silver lining is we're kind of wide open at coaches. So we can get a Vrabel, Brian Flores, someone like that, and they're not going to like step on each other's toes. It's kind of like being bi. You've doubled the number of people you can have sex with, It's not I'd rather not be, but it does come with a silver lining. You know what I mean? Now you're fishing with two fishing poles. You know what I mean? 2 fishing poles. So when you start doing the math on it, you think of like all the possible head coaches that we would be. I know we have our preferences, Soto, but if there's only 6 head coaching gigs available, and we'd be happy with varying versions of happy, from absolutely ecstatic to like thumbs up. Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, Steve Spagnuolo, Todd Monckton, Mike Vrabel, Liam Coen.
That's 6.
That's 6 right there. And then we haven't even throw like Pete Carroll's been bantered about. You're an SC guy. He's old as shit, but he knows how to win. He knows how to run a great organization. He knows how to turn an organization around. He did that. Shit, dude. John Gruden, he wants back in the league. As long as we keep Telesco and he keeps GM decisions away from Gruden, I'd be.
That's a big sticking point for some of these older head coaches. Mm-hmm. Is they feel that they have enough cachet to have more say in personnel decisions. Now, if Gruden and Belichick and for some extent Carroll were more hesitant to work with an outside or a non their guy GM, they're definitely not going to want to do that with a non theirs GM plus a VP of football operations without the title, because he can't have the title.
So now the trick is we got to find a way, because I was asked this when I did a little guest spot. It's like, all right, of the 6 head coaching vacancies, which is the one you think a head coach would want to go to the most? And obviously different head coaches will have different reasons for going places. Maybe an offensive coordinator really wants a great quarterback. Maybe a guy wants to live West Coast or East Coast or fucking whatever, right? But like, when I'm looking at these does it want an owner that's meddling, blah, blah, blah. Of these 6 spots, like Pats have a quarterback, Pats have a rookie quarterback that can be something. Bears have a rookie quarterback that could be something. Jags have a franchise quarterback. Saints have a franchise Carr. I think is still under contract. Like they can cut Carr if they pretty easy with his I don't even know.
Yeah,
but they had a
Carr's not in their future plans at quarterback, unfortunately for him.
So, but they have them whether short or long term. At least there's a quarterback like substance there. Jets are a mess with a meddling owner. Outside of the Jets, I think we have the 5th worst spot on paper, right? When it comes to quarterback, rest of the roster, like Patriots roster is terrible, but you have a quarterback and you have the most cap space. The only team in the league with more cap space than us is the Pats.
Yeah, I mean that's one silver lining is the cap space, but the better part of the ball that we had, which was the defense, we were like 15th in the league in defense. They have like a ton of free agents. So the defense could look completely different next year. And it's a blank canvas, right? It's almost like hiring a young kid to work construction with you because they don't have any bad habits yet. Mm-hmm. You can teach them the exact way you want them to learn things.
Mold them like clay.
Exactly. So that's kind of where we are now for a head coach, because we got some nice pieces. We got a lot of empty spaces and a lot of resources to be able to fill those spaces. So you can mold this with the help of the GM and the likes of Tom Brady and the other owners, stuff like that. You can remold this pretty quickly to what you want. You don't have to worry about a teardown process with these guys because it's pretty wide open already. And I mean that could be a selling point to a potential head coach. the fact that we are able to do and have so much flexibility and do so many things to be able to get us to where we need to go quicker instead of having to run through hoops and wait out contracts and cut guys for dead cap and all this stuff. We already went through that. Mm-hmm. Right now, we're looking to build up as opposed to waiting for things to fall off or tear down.
So if we're Mark Davis and Tom Brady, right, and we're trying to get right, like we want the best guy, we want our number one guy, right? Because we're gonna get it. I think just because of numbers, I think we'll get a coach that we'll be happy with. Like, okay, good. Like, all right, I'm good with this. Like, I'm good. I'm happy. You know what I mean? We're not pissed, but I want to be fucking ecstatic, right? I want to be doing cartwheels in the hallway. If we're Tom Brady and Mark Davis, what is the selling point? Because this will be the 8th head coach that Mark Davis has hired since he took over the team. Like, it is a turnstile for head coaches with the Raiders. And you don't want to do that if you're a young head coach looking to make your mark, right? Like, you don't want that bullshit, right? Don't have a quarterback. Running back room is destroyed. 20 years without a playoff win, right? Like, there needs to be some selling, right? There needs to be some sizzle because there's not a whole lot of stake. What are the selling points? I think it's second most cap space. Big deal. That's no small feat, right? Like, who do you want? We'll work with Telesco and we'll make it happen. Defense, if we re-sign those guys, pretty solid roster, right? No giant holes. Defensive line should be amazing. Outside of that, though, I don't know what we got. It is a brutal division. No quarterback. No, like, real path to get one. I mean, it's going to have to be some, like, you might as well sell a ketchup popsicle to a woman in white gloves. Selling the Raiders to, like, the premium head coach.
So there's a name that
what movie is that from?
Talked about. There's a name that we haven't talked about that we almost had last year. It's Cliff Kingsbury. Mm. Offensive mind. He went to Washington and just got the extra year he wanted. Got the quarterback that he was looking for and all this stuff. But that's to be a coordinator. Being a head coach is a little bit different. You go to a maybe not optimal situation to be the head coach. Here are some selling points to show that things are going to be different. Okay. A lot of times, the head coach and GM were married. So when one went, the other went. That's not the case anymore. We're going to have more continuity in with the GM. We had the person making the decisions of who was going to be put into place, getting a lot of input from a lot of different people, right? And when that happens, it all depends on a lot of times who got your ear last. In this sense, we're going to have somebody from all accounts, that's going to be Tom Brady, who's going to kind of oversee a lot of these decisions being made. So we're taking steps to have more stability in this organization. Some of these decisions needed to be made. Some of these decisions were made for us. And the big turning point in a lot of the quick turnover was getting rid of Del Rio because Gruden wanted to come back. Gruden would only come back if he was the man making all the decisions. Well, you still had McKenzie there. He was there for a year, and then he was gone. And then you brought Mayock in, but it was still Gruden making all these personnel decisions. And so that's why you have all those quick turnovers. You have all those big turnovers, excuse me. And we're not looking to make these turnovers again. We're looking to have a guy come in here to prove his worth as a head coach. If it is, let's say, for example, a Cliff Kingsbury or a Liam Coen or whatever, come in here, Ben Johnson. I really do hope that it's an offensive type coach. Let's just say it's one of those guys. Or even a Joe Barry, who knows? Come in here and just push forward and just show that you're able to do the job. And I think that's what's being lost on a lot of people when they look at least the recent turnover of coaches. Gruden, well, Del Rio, let's go back. Del Rio was forced out because they had a subpar year, and Gruden wanted to come back. Without that, he wouldn't have been gone. Gruden was forced out because he was, sniped by some emails. Josh McDaniels was given a year and change, but that was just not working. That one kind of went against the other two. That was like that was a bad hire type of thing. And the AP one was like, dude, he just didn't show the aptitude for the position. So it wasn't like they were all in like knee-jerk decisions. We gave, AP was a year, but we gave him a flyer. We gave him a chance, knowing that he didn't have the expertise and knowing that he hasn't shown all of what is needed in a head coach. We just were looking for progress, and we didn't see it. So we had to move on. I don't think it's that dire of a situation. I think it's not an optimal situation for a head coach, but maybe not so much a first-time head coach because maybe they are a little bit more pie in the sky. But a guy who's been a head coach and fired wants to get back on the horse, right? He wants to get back in there. And maybe let me know if you agree or disagree, but both in the fight game for a lot of years, right? It's been my experience, especially now working with these fighters. The fighters that want to take time off are the ones that win. Oh man, I won. Sweet. Take a week off or whatever. A lot of times the ones that lose are right back in there. Like the next day they can be in there.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, it's we're competing against 5 other teams, but we're also competing against status quo, right? Like Pete Carroll is an option, but he could just stay doing what he's doing. Ben Johnson's an option. He can just stay as offensive coordinator, right? Like all these guys can unless it's, like Vrabel wants to come back. You got to imagine Brian Flores would take any head coaching position that's offered to him. Vrabel can kind of have his pick more. Ben Johnson can have his pick, but it's like, there's a lot of options out there, right? And if we don't get one of these 9 or 10 guys we talked about, that's a bad sign because there are more qualified guys for the position than there are positions. It's opposite of quarterback, right? Like there aren't 32 good starting quarterbacks on planet Earth. There aren't. There's more NFL teams than there are good quality starting quarterbacks. The inverse is true with head coach. So if we end up again with a coach that none of the other 31 teams would take, that's just a really bad sign. Maybe we just don't have a head coach, right? Maybe we just go into the season without a head coach. You can't have a head coach be fired if you don't hire one.
Oh boy.
Black guy meme pointing to his head. 3D chess, not checkers, Soto.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
No,
3D chess. You want to do some what a Windbags?
Yes, sir. Anything to keep you from doing another bad joke.
Michael Turner, 3761. AP was good at developing players. Look at how much the young players and free agents improved. I think there's some fairness there. I think there's all those defensive linemen off the scrap heap that gave us depth and delivered. Our linebacking core played great. I think there's okay. We asked what did he do well other than motivate his team? Okay, I'll give you that. There's some pretty good development with the young defensive players.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm not going to take that away from him, but you also have to take a look at what was his hand in the development.
Mm.
If he's more of a CEO style head coach, he's not the offensive coordinator. He's not the defensive coordinator. So what did he actually do day to day to improve those players? I'm not taking it away from him. I'm asking a question.
Yeah. Either way, he gets credit for it because it happened under his umbrella, right? It's kind of like when something terrible happens, we blame the head coach. If something good happens, we credit the head coach. I think Spillane, I think we can clearly say that was a big part of that was AP's doing. Like I said, I think the defensive linemen and linebackers, the development of either really good guys that got better, no names that made a name for themselves. Yeah. Okay. Fair play. Tip your hat. There's the two things: motivated, and he did develop some young players, especially on defense. Okay. Not enough to keep a job, but you answered the question, and that's correct. Joe JST1 needed one more year for a fair evaluation of Antonio Pierce, but what's done is done. Okay. Yes. Is 1 year enough time to know if a guy is going to be a good NFL head coach forever? No. That's fair. No. But like we always tend to do is we're thinking things from the wrong perspective. Don't think like, all right, Antonio Pierce has to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that he's not right for us to be the head coach, and then we can fire him. We're always thinking, who's the best man on planet Earth to make the Raiders better as a head coach? You got to think of it in those terms, not what's fair for Antonio Pierce. It's who's the best man for the job. What's fair for Raider Nation? What's fair for the fan base? Like, I love you, AP. I don't give a fuck about your feelings. I care about winning. That's number one priority. So, okay, like if you're Antonio Pierce, was it fair to Antonio Pierce to only give him 1 year? Maybe not, but that's irrelevant. What's fair to AP is completely irrelevant.
So I think AP got a similar number of games to show what he had as Josh McDaniels. And that was the right decision to do too. Get rid of him. And I think their records were similar as well.
AP was one more loss. Josh McDaniels 9-16, Antonio Pierce 9-17.
So there's really not a lot of foundation, of base to this argument when you're saying to get rid of Josh McDaniels. And I understand, they're playing. Okay, yeah. So they weren't playing as hard, they weren't as motivated, and they weren't as coached as well under Josh McDaniels, but they still won the same amount of games. That tells you that it's something that AP is doing himself that we've outlined already that's costing these team games. And I just, if you want to preach consistency, I have said it multiple times already, is finding the right guy, and knowing who the wrong guy is. It's just as important, because you find the right guy, that means you're not wasting time with the wrong guy. You know the guy you have is the wrong guy, so you let him loose and look for another one. So you know you're not wasting your time on the wrong guy. Similar amount of time, similar results. One person had one side of the ball and not the other. One had, the other and not the one that the other had. One was, X's and O's guy, whatever, fine. The other one was more of a, motivational guy, keep, team glue guy. And the game management was, lacking. Put them together, all their good points, and you have a really damn good coach. But unfortunately, that's not possible. So yeah, I just don't see. I think it's a lot of revisionist history. Like, this guy was terrible, and you should get rid of this guy, but this guy needs more time because you like him more. Like, the results still aren't there, and he's not a good head coach. It is what it is.
Yeah, more time for AP would be great for AP if that's your priority. Generally. Yeah. LV Raider 67. Thank you so much for being a member. Much appreciated. Tom Brady isn't an NFL executive. He has never been an NFL GM, scout, or janitor for that matter. This dude isn't going to help do shit. It's laughable you guys think he's some great NFL mind because he won Super Bowls as a player, all caps. That means he's yelling, not front office. So we've touched on this already this show, but it bears repeating. We don't know. None of us are saying Tom Brady's going to be a mastermind as an executive. I haven't said that. I haven't heard Soto say that. I honestly haven't heard anyone of really significance in the media or analysts or anyone say oh my God, this guy's going to be the best team president, talent evaluator, general manager ever. He's going to be amazing. I really haven't heard that from anybody. What it is he is a guy that is not a kiss ass to Mark Davis. He's the first guy since Al Davis to be a football mind that can make decisions for everybody and move the franchise in one direction. Whether that's the right direction or not, time will tell. But like I'm going to say it over and over and over again. I don't know if Tom Brady's the guy, but the Raiders need a Tom Brady-like person. Someone that can steer the whole organization, get everyone rowing in the same direction. It's desperately needed. We haven't had it in 20 years.
If Tom Brady isn't a football guy, then football guys don't exist. Other than a couple of kickers, I don't think in our lifetime we've seen a player play as much football as Tom Brady. We haven't seen anyone win as much as Tom Brady. And he did it in a couple of different roles. He did it as a complimentary piece early in his career where the defense was doing the whole thing. And he did it as the guy going out there and, having the team put on his back. And he did it almost in a pseudo type of offensive coordinator role at Tampa. The first part of that year, the offense was stagnant. He didn't like it, and he changed it. He said, I want this. I want to do these things different. This is what I like better. This is what I think we should do. And it worked. If he's not a football guy, a football guy doesn't exist.
But he's never been a janitor at the NFL. So
yeah, that's just ridiculous. He went from GM scout to janitor. Well, you just skipped over the fact that he's the best quarterback of all, the most winning quarterback of all time as far as.
He's never been a scout before, Soto. How can he possibly be a GM? He's never been a scout.
Well, this guy's never been a scout either, so how does he know? LV Raider 67, I understand that you want to win. I understand, and that's the thing is we all want the same thing here. And just as RJ and I aren't guaranteeing that Tom Brady's going to be the man, he's going to be amazing. What we're doing is we're talking about the reasons why he would. The reasons to be optimistic. This
Raiders franchise, and this is decades of being a fan of this team. They're not like a quarterback away. There needs to be a complete upheaval and regime change at Raider Nation. There needs to be a complete reevaluation of how this organization's run. It's been trash for 20 years, guys. Not a playoff win in 20 years. The worst defense of the last decade and a half. Like, it's been awful. That's not like, oh, let's just get a little piece there. There needs to be a giant wave of change that comes in. If Tom Brady never bought 5% of the Raiders or wasn't a 5% owner and it wasn't even connected to the Raiders at all, what would you have? What would tell you would be different next season? Mark Davis is still going to make the decision. His 8th head coach in the 16 years. He's taken over the 18 years, whatever it's been.
That's the thing. It's like people are so like focused on crapping on what is happening. They don't think about the alternative. Who else is going to be in that position to be a part owner of this franchise and be trusted to make these decisions? Is there a person out there that exists that can do that and do it successfully? No, they're all tied to franchises. The ones we know of, at least. What owner is going to go out there and slide in there and be a freaking GM or football of operations who has more experience in the game than Tom Brady? None.
This is Mark Davis,
the guy that you're shitting on for making bad decisions for the last 10 years. Come on, guys.
This is Mark Davis trying something different.
Be smart.
Trying something smart, right? Like, this isn't like if he wasn't doing this, would you have faith Mark Davis would find the right head coach? Would you have faith that this regime would find an all-star, all-pro quarterback? Like, if you think Tom Brady is going to just crash and burn, right?
He might
completely suck at it. Then okay, well, what would you like to see happen? Like, don't even try. Don't even give something different a stab. Like, don't even like shake things up. Try something different. This isn't a franchise that's like, hey guys, we've clearly got the winning formula. Don't screw it. Let's not shake the tree too much. We've got what we got going on is working. Let's just stay the course. Like, shake things the fuck up.
It's a big change from the way things have happened in the past. The last few times a quarterback has been, or a head coach has been fired, the GM was out too, right?
Mm-hmm.
McKenzie had to stay along to do the draft, basically, right? But for all intents and purposes, he was gone as the acting GM. He was the GM in title, but as soon as Gruden came in, he was making all the decisions. Gruden was gone, and the GM was gone. Okay, here comes Josh McDaniels with his own GM. JMD is gone, and the GM is gone. You know, that is the big twists and turns in this organization is when the GM is gone. The GM still has a plan moving forward, and if you want to take a look at more stability than that, a VP of play. I say that because that's probably, if he was eligible to have a title in this organization, it would be a VP of personnel, a VP of player of football operations or whatever. It would be that. If you have one of those, then the plan gets more focused. It doesn't stray as much because that person's going to want to hire a GM that's more in line with what he wants, as opposed to a Mark Davis who's kind of like looking all over the place and just flipping and flopping from one direction to another. There should be more stability now that things are going to be structured this way.
Raiders need a czar of football. That's needed. And now we have one. Is he the right guy? I don't know. But we haven't had one in forever. So let's watch him try. We just did 72 minutes just on the head coach of the Raiders. I still think there's a lot more to get to. We will keep you guys abreast of everything. No more weekend post-game shows live because Raiders are done. So we just enjoy football by watching the playoffs. College playoffs, Thursday and Friday. And wild card weekend gets going. Great time to be a football fan. We don't have to worry about Raiders winning or losing. We can just enjoy football and rooting against the Chiefs. There's a lot of teams to root against in the AFC now. We got three AFC West teams to root against. So that's always fun. If there are giant changes in the coaching search, someone's hired, not hired, big news, we will go live and keep you guys up to date on everything. But until then, knock on wood if you're with me. Hey, you made it to the end of our video. Great job. I know you want more. Go ahead and click the next video. And if you're feeling crazy, go ahead and subscribe.